Okay. Any other comments for Nicholas?
I have a comment, if that's okay. Oh, first of all, do you want us to raise our hand or can we just speak up?
I think you can just jump in. There's only five of us here. You know,
Okay. Nicholas, I loved it that you started out with a little humor. I'm I appreciate that. Somehow people think I'm too serious for that. So I rarely do it, but I really appreciated that. And what I really like about your voice and presentation is um, you could hear the expression in your voice, but yet it was non-threatening. You know, just the rising and lowering in the tone of your voice. Just I thought was just really lovely. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nicholas, I enjoyed it too very much, and you just look comfortable. That's you put me at ease that way. I love the joke, of course.
Yeah.
Gosh, those of us who have difficulty telling jokes
Yeah, me.
admire that quality that you have. Um, but it's also though it's the pacing, and of course the content was great, and you just put your audience at ease, and I think that's such a big thing. That's such a big thing. Um, when you want to share something, you can just you can feel that calmness. So I think it was awesome. It's good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
yeah. Okay. Who would like to go next?
Well, which one? What do you think? Do you want to
You can go ahead, Warren.
flip a coin? Okay.
No, I'll
Yeah.
go last. It's okay.
Oh, all righty. Okay, everyone. Well, here to talk about a basic unity principle today, and it's about giving and receiving, and specifically about tithing. Now, that's a word that has jolted a lot of people, and I know in my life, I have I have listened to that word being said in various places and had various reactions, and really years and years ago, first thinking about tithing, it always made me restricted my heart just a little bit, thinking that it was uh, a chore, an obligation, something that people do because they're kind of twisted, arm twisting situation happening. Now, I don't even know where that idea came from, is the interesting thing. I've been in Unity since I was 13 years old. I'm very accustomed to the idea of giving, receiving, and tithing. Yet, I don't know where I picked it up, but just the idea later, in my 20s, 30s, I was resistant to tithing. I was resistant because I didn't think I had enough. I didn't think that there was enough to do tithe 10%. I was told it was okay to tithe whatever was mine to give, but to give it in love. And I appreciated that very, very, very much. So during my life, I fell away and back and forth into the church circle. And as I look back over that time, when I look back over the time of my experience, when I've really attended and been a part of a spiritual community, and the time that I haven't, the time that I've been with the spiritual community, I've always given. I've always given of at least a Sunday offering. And I look back over those times now that I'm a little more mature. And I look back and see that each one of those times I engaged with my community and I gave of my talent or my time, my attention, my love, that my life was better. So this idea of giving and receiving, I saw very, very well, but still resisted tithing. Tithing still sounded like a price that you had to raise to somehow. I went to a prosperity class in one of, not that long ago, maybe about 10 years ago. And during that prosperity class that was taught at my spiritual community in my church, there was again came up the idea of tithing, and we were meditating about it. We were being taught about it, and it came to me that I can look at it much differently. I can look at it as living on 90% of my income or giving up 10% of my income. I realized that there was no reason in the world why I couldn't live on 90% of my income. And then I thought, what a wonderful gift this would be if I could actually do this. I started embracing the idea of giving a committed gift. And at first it wasn't quite 10%. And then came up the idea of, well, will it be 10% of my taxable income or my actual income? Or, I started doing math, and it's like, no, I understand. And I get that it's really about giving where your spiritual love, where your spiritual food comes from, to give back to your spiritual community after being fed spiritually. I loved in Butterworth's book that talked about the law that used to be like a taxation, as a tithe back in the ancient times. And that Jesus came and we transcended that law in many ways with love, with the idea of sharing and giving. He likened it to a bicycle where the spiritual law is the same as physics. The same physics keeps that bicycle up, whether it has training wheels on it or whether it doesn't. So tithing is like that. We learn how to give, and we develop our giving practices as they grow with us in consciousness. And so I'm here to tell you that it has been a pleasure now when I am asked to share about tithing, when I'm asked about whether I tithe or not from anybody else, because I see it as an act of love, and I see it as a powerful spiritual tool in my life. So please, everyone, join me in this powerful practice, because it will definitely change your life and you'll live an abundant, well-balanced life. Say.
Hey, thank
Namaste.
you, thank you. Warren, I really felt like when you were talking about your own experience of tithing, your journey with giving, it felt like you were speaking straight from your heart, and I appreciate that so much. I love that you share your journey, how you were resistant to the idea, and then you kind of grew into consistent giving or committed giving, and then and all the benefits that you have received from it, all the blessings that you received from it. So I think that's a very effective way to get a point across, is to share our journey, share our experience. So good job.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really believe that telling a single story will keep people engaged in the whole talk, and the way you made it all about personal experience without making yourself a hero in your own talk, right? We don't want to do that. But you did a great job. You did that balance just right. And I think anyone watching, if you were giving that in your center or your church or whatever, would have followed along the whole way. And the willingness to be a little vulnerable, talk about your own doubts, talk about your own growth. And that's a really engaging thing too for speakers. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you, Nicholas.
I really appreciated that all the things that they've said, especially the personal touch about, we become ministers because of our personal beliefs and our personal journeys. That's all about how we end up in the pulpit in the first place, right? So this is awesome that you can say, oh, me, this is me, right? And then in there, you said this, and this is a nugget that I will take away and I will relay it and use it again. It says, we develop our giving practices. We don't come with a giving practice. We develop a giving practice. And I think that's a nugget that people can grow on. That I'm not expecting you to just jump right in and give 10% if you don't understand it and if you don't have it. but I do create a path that if you want to get to 10%, you can, or beyond, right? And I think that's what people need to understand about faith. It's a development. It's not, we don't come ready. We don't come instantly, oh, I'm, exceptionally faithful. We come with doubts and questions. And I think you make it very clear that we develop a giving practice. And that's pretty awesome to hear. So I'm in.
Thank you.
And I concur with all three. I tell you, right off in my nose, I just really appreciate how open and honest and truthful you were in your ability and willingness to reflect on that and to share that. That was amazing, and I really appreciate it. And I too have a couple of your quotes I've written down. And the one, we develop our giving practices. And the other one is when you mentioned that Jesus transcends the law with love. I tell you what, those are two very powerful statements. And Warren, I just really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda.
Okay. All righty. Alba.
All right. Okay. So I'm a conversationalist when I start to speak about things. But one of the things that's very interesting about me, and when I think about the tithe, I remember my entry into traditional church and my first memories of it. I lived in the inner city growing up, and we were in a case of the have and have nots. And traditional church had always taught us that we weren't worthy in the first place. So when you're not worthy in the first place, and then you go to church and someone asks you for a tithe, you kind of go, well, what is this? We can't even go to church and feel worthy because we, of course, are the have-nots and we don't have a tithe. And so when I began to think about that, it took a long time to transcend all of these feelings that we had around money and money blocks. So coming into prosperity and prosperity classes and the unity movement have really given me voice to how I think about the tithe and how I can teach about the tithe. And it also helps me to reflect on how misinterpreted the scriptures have been in our lives, in my life, and in the lives of the people that I serve and the people that know me as my friends. They didn't all transition to the unity movement, but they understand me. And so when they want to come and talk about it. So in lesson 8, when Fillmore opens up and he says, forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. In these words, Jesus expressed an infallible law of mind. The law that one idea must be dissolved before another can take its place. And so we hear some of this stuff in just language. We hear it in when two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time, but we don't really apply it to the idea of thought that if I believe this, that I can't contradict and believe this and have a faith. We hear it in the Bible when it says, a double-minded man will receive nothing from the law. It says the Lord, but it's the law. If you're double-minded, you kind of start over here and then you don't receive over there. And I just started to struggle with the whole idea of tithing. So when I think about it and I really look at it, what I come to understand is that the tithe for me has become the demonstration of the belief in oneness, right? So one of the things I would always talk to God about, and this was before my faith developed to the place that it is right now, I would say, why would you send me to the earth with nothing and then tell me that I live an abundant life? I remember for years on end just looking around my neighborhood going, where's this abundance? And so what I decided was that God wasn't for me. And I lived that life. I grew up in the inner city. My brother was murdered by the time I was 13. My dad had died from cancer. My grandmother had died from cancer, and I wasn't even 15 yet. Right. And so you're thinking about this abundance. Where is it? And then we live in poverty. Everybody around us is in poverty, but not only just in deed, but in mind. Because people would die and get murdered and homicides, and there was no forgiveness. And then I would go to the church house and hear about tithes and forgiving and abundance. And I felt like they were talking about some other person's life and not my own. But when I walked into unity and we started to talk about the idea of oneness and redefining debt as forgiveness and redefining and understanding that God sends you to the earth because abundance is thought. The idea is the thing that actually is the seed of belief. And so that the act of giving is belief in oneness, that what I am a child of God and anything that is God is mine. But I think you have to dissolve these thoughts of lack. You have to address the thoughts of lack. So even when I talk to people about tithing, I think I would say, come on, let's have an ongoing conversation about it. And as your disbelief comes up, you can, talking about the tithe, it's either a test of your faith or it becomes an opportunity to demonstrate your belief as you develop. So these are some of the things that I take away, is that if we believe that we are all connected, it's an act of faith to give to that which we are connected to. So when you go to church, Martella Whitsett, the author, she came to our church a couple of weeks ago to talk to the prayer chaplains. And one of the things she said in her talk was, there is a point when you introduce your human self to your spiritual self. And when you're talking about the tithe, unfortunately, we get the human self first. Whether we are living abundance, living in lack, if you're doing without things, or if you have what you need, we are living in that reality. And then the spiritual part of you is abundant, abundant, abundant. And if these two people are not introduced to themselves, then you always live in a contrite state. And so as I began to develop that, I will tell my friends, listen, the human part of you says that people are all out to get your money, to make themselves rich. And that's why they feel like you should freely give to the tithe. And so what I would argue would be, you can give a tithe in your treasure, your talents, or your time. Start where you are. Start where you can give. But if you're coming to a place in a community, you want to give something. You want to give your time. You want to feel like you can eat from the table because I am important by giving something of myself. But in addition to that, right, we always worry that money and funds will be misappropriated. So a part of giving financially is also to come to the church and understand what governance is, understand how the money is being used, but that is up to us. This is what love and action is, that you're present and you're not just offering money. Too often we hide behind internet, we hide behind, TV ministries, and we send money in. And then when we find out the person's a crook, it's us saying, listen, we knew it. We can't distrust, we can't believe in people. You can't trust people to do with that. But when you participate in your time, your treasure, and your talents, then the tithe balances out. And this is your human self meeting your spiritual self, especially because we learn about money and poverty and lack way before we learn about abundance in the human form. So these are my ideas about tithing and giving and receiving. And I am so excited to just be able to talk about it in a way of dissolving one thought for another.
Okay, great. I loved that. I wrote down so many of your thoughts, or the words, because it just put it a little bit differently than from what I heard. First of all, I really love that you shared your early experience with the church and with people asking you for money. I think that's really important to for people to hear, to tell you the truth. And then I loved that you brought Fillmore in, of course, with the quote. And I think you said something along the lines of tithing is an opportunity for us to demonstrate our belief in oneness. And that's so beautifully put, Alva. It really is. And it's a test of faith or an opportunity to demonstrate. I like that one too, so you had some great ideas. I think I probably could have listened to you another half hour, however, I did ask to keep the 5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah.
And but it was beautifully done. I think you speak with a lot of spiritual authority. That's what I hear. You and yeah, not that the others don't, but I just felt like you were coming from a place, your own personal experience, and this is what you have found out to be true. And I'm along for it. I'm along for the ride. So
Thank you.
mhm.
So Alva, it was wonderful. I loved listening to you talk, and I especially loved the framework you built in the beginning to where you and your community were, and how it felt. I really got that. And what I got out of it was how wonderful and important your awakening to spiritual presence is. That a spiritual way of looking at life rather than a materialistic physical way that's so painful and so full of tragedy.
Right.
I really came through, and me too. I got that. I wrote down a quote: "Giving is a belief in oneness.
Mhm.
Giving is a belief in oneness," and I love that. Yeah, I had in my talk, I had a few things rattling around in my mind about principle, and it came out more of a personal thing, but it I want to, it makes me want to say, yeah, what she said, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah. So I love listening to you, and it was a great offering. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alva, I'd like to say that when you talk, it feels like you invited me over, we're sat at your kitchen table, we're having a cup of tea together, and you're telling me the real, or maybe an adult beverage, and you're giving me the real, giving me the truth here.
Mhm.
Like, let me tell you how it is. That's the whole vibe you give
Mhm.
off when you talk. So it feels very down to earth, right, for people that you're not talking about I mean, you're talking about the principles, but you don't realize you're talking about the principles. It just feels like you're just telling me the real business, right? Yeah, so I'll give you that. And the other thing I'll say is your passion. It's everything you said felt authentic. Everything you said felt like a lived experience. And it would make people want to be want to be near you with someone with that kind of lived experience and willing to share. So thank you.
Thank you.
And that's what I wrote in my notes, that your willingness to share your life experiences. And when you speak with your whole body. You speak with no, you do. You speak with your hands, you speak with your eyes, you speak with all of your facial expressions. So it's very engaging. And I too wrote your quote down, and it was something like tithe is an opportunity to demonstrate the belief of oneness. I think that's going to go in my quote journal. I keep a journal of quotes that I just read and hear. And Alva, I think that's in my next entry. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, y'all. Namaste. I appreciate it.
Well, I want to just say that I think everybody did such a great job, and I want to encourage you to make a 5-minute video and bring it to your ministry and say, this was a school project, but I'd like to share it. Put it in the newsletter. If you have I'm sure your church has a newsletter that goes out, I'm going to do that. I'll probably put this in the newsletter if that's okay with you.
It's okay with me.
It's okay.
Jen already gave me permission to put hers in, so. The other thing, let me stop the recording. We don't need to.